Good afternoon, everybody. I'll call this meeting of the Woodford County Fiscal Court's Budget and Finance Committee to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Taylor?
Here.
Squire Barner?
Here.
Squire Carl?
Here.
Judge Kay?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. So we are moving along through the budget process, and as you can see, we have some of our large interlocal government agencies reporting either drafts or preliminary budgets to us. I'll start out with the Parks and Recreation budget, Rich, if you want to. You can also defer to Steve if you want to. It's whatever you want to do.
I try to work it. We've already negotiated a deal and I won. Rock, paper, scissors.
Well, to the winner goes the first budget presentation then. So you all have received a copy of that, and Rich, will you just take us through what your board has done? Have they approved things and that sort of thing? And
Yes, they've approved this draft budget to present to you. And I'll just hit real quick the highlights that is in front of you. I won't reread it for you, but budget is essentially very similar to last year's budget. We've got a 0.5% increase in whole for the city and the county. We've got $200,000 in capital improvements, and the largest of those, new scoreboards are in need at the building. We need new scoreboards for our basketball and our pool. Those are all the original scoreboards from 23 years ago now, along with the swim timing system. The larger item is the outdoor pool water slide renovation. This is our ongoing effort to, keep renovating that pool so that we don't end up having to just build a whole brand new one. And that's one of the big problems with outdoor pools is you have to stay on top of the yearly maintenance. And this would be a renovation of those outdoor water slides, along with replacement of the main pool pump motor. That pool cannot operate without that motor. It's very unique, and it is original motor. So the plan is over the next 4 years to replace each motor that's in that pump room, and the main pump being the first and highest priority. Other are smaller items, salt box, a gator vehicle for our maintenance, a new county park sign. If you've been out there, it's in dire need of a new sign. We're not looking to go with a marquee sign, but getting some input on a sign that actually doesn't say Falling Springs on it, but says welcome to the Woodford County Park, and then would say the home of Falling Springs, the home of the Woodford Theater, and I would like it to say the home of Woodford County Garage, Community Stadium, food pantry, jail, dog park, and so on and so forth. But hopefully that's what I envision for that. But we haven't designed anything yet. I want to work with all the stakeholders and everybody out there at the park to get their opinion of it. New carpeting in the batting complex, which is the original carpeting, is in dire need of that. Another larger item, the new recreational software. And not to get in the weeds of this, but we've been using original software from Vermont Systems since we opened. And the software has worked well. It handles everything that we do at Parks and Rec. It books all the ball fields. It sells passes. It's a reservation system. It does it all. But it's getting a little bit outdated, and there's newer systems out there. The one we're looking to go to comes with it's all in an app. So the younger people who just have to do everything on an app and on their phone, they will have this. Literally, mom in the pickup line at Southside can grab her phone with 2 clicks, can sign up their kids for swim lessons, for taekwondo, for basketball leagues, or anything like that. It'll also give people the ability to manage their own accounts much easier. So they can sign up for programs, they can withdraw from programs, they can buy passes, they can do everything. So it'll put a lot more on the patrons to use, give them a lot more control over what they're doing, and it's much, much easier on the back end to learn how to program. Right now, just learning how to use the Vermont systems takes about 6 months to get somebody somewhat trained into being comfortable to work in it, and this will be much easier going forward. And then another item that hopefully will be on all future capital improvement lists, in my opinion, is the $10,000 for future retirement liabilities. As you may know, as somebody retires, several years ago, the state mandated that you pay their if they have 6 months or any time of sick leave accrued, that the department now gets charged that amount of money. And recently we've had 2 people retire in Heather Major and Randy Johns. While one didn't have that, the other one did have a sizable amount. And in the next 5 to 8 years, we will have potentially 3 to 4 people or more who could retire. So I'd like to start setting money aside each year so that when that person retires, it's no strain on that budget. For example, the one person we're paying out this year, it's $22,000 for paying out their 6-month sick leave. So as we have more and more people coming, we need to have a reserve set aside. And this money we pulled out each year, set into a CD so that the first one is not for 5 years, but when that 5-year period comes up, we have money sitting there and it doesn't become a strain on the budget. So that's the capital improvements. That's the highlights of the budget, but I will be glad to take any questions that you may have about any specific items.
Well, thank you, Director Pichter. And let me ask, by way of update and on the topic of budget, the parks project and plan. Can you give us an update about what's going on with that? Anything we need to know and what it's ultimately going to look like in this fiscal year, as far as what we can expect?
In this fiscal year, what I would expect is to see the first developments happen at Big Spring, to start at Big Spring. We still believe, first of all, let me step back. The Parks Board reviewed preliminary construction plans at our last board meeting. We'll be getting those again at our April meeting and hopefully finalizing those and be able to go out for bid. Once we put it out for bid, we will then have a much better idea of when projects will get started at Big Spring Park. Talking with our engineer and architect, he still believes we're on a time that companies will get to it this summer, which would mean the park will be closed down this summer, possibly with the plans of being fully reopened by next spring. So at this point next year, we hope to fully be reopened. We don't know that timetable yet because we haven't put it out for bid. So until we get with these companies and we know that someone can do the job right now, that's what we're waiting on that. At the same time, pickleball courts. We also had a preliminary layout of those, and we'll be getting the final design on the pickleball courts at our next meeting as well. So that project will be moving forward. That project may break ground, most likely break ground before Big Spring, just because it is much simpler to do. It'll potentially, 2 to 3 weeks of good weather, and that project could be done. But that could move forward. So as far as this fiscal year, you could see some expense starting to come in on the pickleball courts as they get built. Just the initial, possibly grading and some of those things. But I don't know if we'd see completion before the end of this fiscal year. But I will know more after April the 8th when I see more of the plans.
Yes, and we'll await that update. And one of the things that we would look at to our budget is what we would budget in the next fiscal year for that project for the county's contribution. And
I would look at that being the Big Spring portion, which is estimated, guesstimated, if you will, at $2.6 million. So the county's portion would be half of that. And the pickleball courts, which was $250, so half of that $250 would majority. I'd say most of all Big Spring would be in next fiscal year, and then pickleball courts majority. I'd say at least 90% would be in the next fiscal year, maybe 5 or 10% hitting this fiscal year before June 30th of this year. But again, I will have much clearer numbers as we go to bid and know that exact Big Spring number and the exact pickleball number as to what the actual bids come in and when the time frames for starting work will be. So that's my best guess at this point, but I would say I could be back at one of your April meetings to give a full report as to what we learn.
Well, of course, we'd welcome you anytime, but particularly if you want to, Mark, to give us that update, that'd be great.
Will do.
Your meeting's when? Your next meeting?
Board meeting is April the 8th.
And our first fiscal court meeting of April is the 9th.
So I could be here on the 9th and let you know what I learned on the 8th.
All right. A couple things I know. One of the things that folks were very interested in knowing about was the baseball fields bathroom project. Can you give an update on that?
They are open.
They're open.
They are open now, yes. They are fully renovated, all new plumbing, all commercial grade plumbing, all new automatic flush toilets, motion sensing lighting. I'm meeting with MetroNet tomorrow to install the internet Wi-Fi down there, which will then provide the camera system around the outside of the building, which will not only secure the bathrooms, the concession stand, and we'll have some eyes on the ball fields for the first time. And that was something that I negotiated when we switched from Spectrum to MetroNet at Falling Springs itself. We also then worked a deal that they would install internet down at that location.
Excellent.
But they're really nice. They hopefully will make it much more pleasant.
Absolutely. So I'd like to open up the floor for any questions of Director Pichter regarding the Parks and Recreation budget.
Not all at once. Take your time.
I see you daily.
Squire Varner?
Yes, sir.
That's a nice shirt you got there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yes.
Great minds.
Rich, those pumps are 18,000 apiece.
Not the other pumps won't be. That pump is 18,000. That's the largest of the pump, and
The other two is
the other four are smaller. They're the ones that run like the slides, the play features.
Right.
They're a smaller size. I want to say that they run closer to like 10 to 12. With the smallest two, they run about 5, so they'd probably be on the final cycle together. But they're easier to get in and get replaced. This main one is the key because if a slide goes down, we can always just close one slide. If the main goes down, we can't operate.
Thank you, Rich.
And that would be scheduled to be done in September as soon as we shut down. Before we actually drain the pool, we will have the new pump ordered, come start of the fiscal year. That way they can install it while there's still water and get it tested before we shut the pool down.
Thank you, Squire Varner. Other questions or comments regarding the Parks and Recreation budget?
Thank you.
Seeing none? Thank you, Rich.
If you have
We
any, feel
appreciate-
free. If you have any questions on the other projects too, always feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
And so you all, any other questions, direct those to Director Pichter, but that Parks and Recreation budget is finally approved by the Parks and Recreation Board. So in order for that to change in any way, they'd have to meet again. I don't anticipate that, so that request will very likely go into our budget. And as I mentioned, any anticipated expenditures as part of the Parks project will also be budgeted. I will let you all know that I will very likely conservatively budget that amount to make sure that we cover payment for whatever we anticipate in that amount, which, as you can see, the 1.3 million for Big Spring Park is a big ticket line item. But again, depending on how that plays out, even if we don't foot that entire cost in that budget, it'll probably be represented, which will very likely, in the scheme of things, increase our budget expenses view as well. Because of course we anticipated spending some of that in this year's fiscal year, but if it's not realized until next year, it is planned, approved, and appropriated budget funding, but it'll represent as a higher expenditure line item. So if I could, I'll invite Steve Hunter from Planning and Zoning.
All right.
Steve he will hand out the budget there, the preliminary budget presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And Steve is doing budget a little bit differently than it has been done in the past. And I think that you will find it to have a lot of data and information regarding revenues and expenses.
Here.
Oh, one more. Sorry.
You ready?
All right.
Ready when you are, Steve.
So
Thank
let me
you.
explain what I handed out to you. It's exactly the same document you have, except I put it on legal size and put it on 3 pages instead of 2. It's a little bigger. What's different is I added a right-hand column, which you see in gray. So you're getting a little bit of more kind of inside baseball stuff related to, this is more what the budget committee for the planning commission saw. The budget I sent you is what we call our legislative view. It's just the columns minus maybe some of these details. So what you see now is you're going to see everyone's salaries, the COLAs, some other notes are in that gray column that relate to some things in the budget. So it's the same document you have, the numbers are the same, but I'm going to use this document. And let me just explain kind of what we're going to do real quick. Across the top, and I'll just mention the columns you see, obviously the left-hand column are the categories. What you're going to see across is our year-to-date, our projected through June 30th. You didn't have this third column in your budget. That's our this year's budget before we amended it. And then the next column, what I'll call column 4, is the amended budget. We've already amended our budget once, but I wanted to be able to show you what our budget was July 1 of this current year. We just amended it here recently. And then the column in blue is our what we call our preliminary budget moving forward for next year, fiscal year 25. And that's the column I'll focus on. You can see I also put numbers down the right-hand column that I can refer to, and I'm going to focus on the things that are highlighted in yellow and kind of keep this quick. But before I do, I just want to mention a couple things that the judge has sort of led off with. I inherited a budget when I started in August of 22. And they'd already done the budget, and that budget had been the same style for a lot of years. It's what I'll call a collapsed budget maybe. You guys in the past maybe just saw the word salaries or saw the word fees. It was more generic in format. And one of the things I did last year when I did this budget for the first time was to go to more a line item style budget that you see on the left, uncollapse those fees, and then look at things more individual. We had a lot of things grouped together that I think should have been separated, what I'll call like contractual items. We had some items, some accounts that were kind of, fat in nature a little bit, just to have a little bit of money in there. Now these are set aside as specific reserve accounts with targets and formulas, and I'll explain those to you. I think you saw these last year, but they're very similar to last year. But the goal here is to keep the budget tighter, have targeted reserve accounts, trend these fees more specifically so I understand where our money's coming in, because we got a lot of different fees that we generate, and then keep our expenses to the dollar, and if they need to be amended, we'll amend them, as opposed to make those categories, have a little bit of fluff in them. That's not the concept here. From a philosophical standpoint, from budgeting, when I come to the governments, I've worked in 2 other counties. My goal is not to ask the city and the county for more funding year to year to year. When I first got here, I trended our budget over 10 years with the Planning Commission Budget Committee, and what I saw was over those 10 years, it seems like we went to the city and county and just asked for a little more money every year till we're to the point where now we're at that 140,000 mark. What we're asking for this year is the same amount as the prior year and the prior year to that. And what I want to show you guys in the way we're trying to budget is my plan is, as long as I'm here, to not have to come to the city and the county and ask for any more money. I didn't do it in 9 years in Warren County. It was the same amount every year. Boyle County, 5 years, same amount every year. And the way we get there is to understand our revenues better and to trend those better and to see where our money's, the money that we eat off a little bit better, and understand those revenues. And that was hard for me to do because our fees were collapsed as one number. So if you look at the right and you look at columns 7 through 19, we just had one item in our prior budget just said fees. So you couldn't figure out what were zone changes or what were plats or what were building permits. You can go back in the county software and find that. But now we're breaking those out and we're starting to trend those so I understand where the fees are performing. So with that, I'm just going to jump into the right-hand column and walk you down through some stuff. The first item, number 1, I want to point out, it's highlighted in yellow. That's our carryover, what we project our bank balance will be June 30th. And you can see it's projected to be about $224,000, almost $225,000. But if you look to the column to the left, this prior year it was $345,000. That's a big difference, and let me explain that. We have a lot of money in our carryover, but what's interesting about what we do is when we start our year, we got to assume our fees will be a certain number and be somewhat conservative. We know what our bank balance is, but until we get into the year and we're heavy on construction fees, especially building permits, we really don't know where we're going to land until the construction season kicks off and happens. And so last year, interesting enough, we were kind of on that same trend, but we had a massive fee come in, I think in April or May. It was almost $90,000. And so sure enough, our carryover at the end of the prior year ended up being about $100,000 more than we expected. But starting off this year, we think we're going to be about $225,000, and then our fees kick in after that. So the main thing I think you guys are obviously interested in is line 3, which is the county's appropriation. And as I mentioned, we're asking for the same amount as the prior year, no increase. Same with the city and the same with Midway. I like to look at our fees as kind of a three-legged stool approach. We get money from the city and the county. Those are big dollar amounts, and I appreciate that. But our fees are kind of the third leg of that. And if you add up lines 7 through 19, that's about $122,000 in our fees, and that's being conservative. But what's interesting, when you look at those fees and drill down on all those things we do, and you can look at them on the left, all the different kind of fees we generate from different permits, different activities. The big one's number 12, which is building permits, and we're starting off our budget year similar, $88,000. But when you look at our actual projected and our year to date, if you follow back to the left, you can see we're already over $100,000 this year. We're projecting we're going to be at 120. And what's interesting about that, we still got 4 months to go in this calendar fiscal year on revenues. So it's a good chance our revenues are going to come in even higher on building permits, and then that carryover amount will probably even go a little higher. But we don't know till we get there. We just had 2 more barrel warehouses come in. That was $18,000. We got a couple of other big permits rolling in. So I suspect that number is going to be well over 120 for this year, but we don't know till we get there. But that'll affect that carryover start next year. But we're trying to start the next year with lines 7 through 19 back conservative till we know what they are. Interesting, I want to point out line 11 is plats. I would have never guessed that subdivision plats would have been our second highest fee, and you can see it is. And then I want to point out line 16, which is construction review fees. Historically, construction review fees, when we look at like major subdivisions, like what's happening with Ball Homes right now, we were getting $500 to review a set of plans. We've changed that to a construction-based percentage based on the size of the project. So the Planning Commission has revised their fees, and our construction review fees are going to 1%. They started in January. So moving forward, it's 1% of the public infrastructure that's being installed. So if they go out there, for example, and put in $2 million of public infrastructure, we're going to get $2,000 to review those construction plans, not $500. So my guess is down the road, and as most planning commissions, Scott County does this on a percentage basis. The counties I've been in do that. I'm going to guarantee over the next 5 years that'll be one of our biggest fee drivers. When we got a lot of subdivisions being built, historically we'd get $500. If we did 4 projects, $2,000. I'm going to guess this year alone, it's probably going to be, we're budgeting $2,500, but it could be $10,000 or $20,000 in the near future. We've got 4 projects coming our way now, and we're going to get 1% of whatever that public infrastructure is, as opposed to $500. So that'll take the pressure off having carryover, and guarantee we'll never have to come back ask for more funds, because we're going to have, in a sense, a new revenue driver here, and I'm guessing it'll be our number 2 fee going forward. So you go down to line 24, and you actually see our revenues before the carryover, 468, 189, and I'll just mention that because I'm going to come back to it. Go down the budget, we're going to go downhill a little bit further. So what you see in the A, B, C, and D, those are the actual staff salaries. That's, we're a small staff, so you can figure out who's who. There's my salary, our office manager, the building inspector, our engineer. GIS is kept separate, and I'll explain that in a minute. But there's our prior year salaries and our current year proposed. We have put in there a 3% COLA as a placeholder. Not sure what the city and the county is going to do, but we're going to follow suit, whatever that is. So again, this is a preliminary budget. That's a placeholder. If the county, for example, said we're going to do 2% or 1 or whatever, 5, we'll follow suit. If the city and the county are different, we'll take the lower of the 2. That's just kind of, again, some of that philosophical approach to the budget. We're not going to do COLAs higher than either one of our parent governments, obviously. So right now it's 3% as just a placeholder, and we may tweak that back. So you see salaries in 220 and 26. One big driver in our budget, line 30 is interesting. Our actual CERS rates are rolling down over a few years through some stuff we've got from the state. So that's actually going down a little bit, which is interesting. But line 31 is a big deal to us. And we piggyback on the county's healthcare policies, and we were told to kind of plan in possibly a 15% increase. in the healthcare premiums. So we put that in there, and if you look at our budget, it's fairly small, but that's a big increase for us. And if you turn the page and look at line 40, our overall personnel costs, you can kind of see year to year, there's the difference right there, is that healthcare premium increase. Hopefully it comes in less, 7, 8, 10%, but right now we're budgeting for a 15% increase, Judge, and we're just going to follow your all's lead on that. That's why our budget's preliminary until we know our government appropriations, our final healthcare costs, some of our other insurance. We just don't know where we're at till we get further into May or June. And then real quick, line 51 is our office expense. Actually, that's going down. Line 54 is what we call our local travel expense. That's the building inspector. That's driving around the county. That's building inspections. That's vehicle maintenance. Line 67 is actually these contractual items. Again, in the old budget, these are all pushed into different categories, and we broke these out separate. And one I want to point out is line 60. We're not sure either what we did wrong or why, if our attorney's mad at us, but they sent us a revised quote for next year, and you can see it's a huge increase. So right now, our attorney, we pay our Planning Commission attorney a flat $1,000 retainer per month, and they said it's been there for a long time, and it's time for an increase, and they're proposing to go to $2,400 a month. So that's a big increase we're looking at. We're going to talk with them and try to negotiate that with them. And we've already told them if they can't work something out, we're just going to go shopping for a new attorney. But you can see in our budget, that's jumping from $12,000 to $28,800. And right below that line 61, we also have other legal money. That's just the Planning Commission money, the day-to-day stuff, attending our meetings. But we also have litigation when we're in court on these cases, and we get billed an hourly rate, and that's a backup number right there. So between 60 and 61, that's our legal fees that we have to just have as being a Planning Commission. So 67, you can see down there our contractual items have gone up almost $10,000 from the prior year budget, $9,000 from the amended, and that's mostly due to that legal stuff. Line 69, turn the page, we're on the last page. This is non-local travel. That'd be if any of us go to any conferences or things. I don't tend to ever go to any conferences, nor do I travel out of state. But some of the board has done some training. We got some local stuff we do. You can see year to date we've only spent $730, but we just budget approximately $1,000 in there for training for the board and staff. Starting last year, we started to break GIS out separate, and we'll talk about that in more detail at some point here. But lines 70 through 86, I was always kind of curious what our GIS cost was. It's an interesting department. We're lucky to have it. But it was all blended in with other stuff, and there was contractual things in there that needed to be contractual. There was hardware that was GIS and software that wasn't Planning Commission, was GIS. So this breaks it all out there and shows you our GIS department is about $149,000 to run the GIS department here at the Planning Commission. And then that shows you up there in the gray box around line 70 shows you those salaries. COLAs again projected at 3%. So that gets us down to the bottom line. 88 is our actually target revenues or expenses, and of that, our formula for carryover that we want to push into line 90 is we want to have a 10% operating reserve as a target. Capital reserves, if we could have them. Comp plan reserves, if we can have them. But unfortunately, right now, we're only at about a 2.5% target, simply because that carryover is projected to be less. If it comes in a little heavier, we'll be able to fill those columns out. But you can see right to the left, last year we kind of had a lot of good money sitting in those reserve accounts. The goal is not to spend them, and this year we have not spent any of those reserve accounts. But because the carryover is starting off less, we don't have those targets at this point. Again, and to show you the comparison, the way our budget flows, if you go back and look at line 24 on page 1, and look at our revenues, just think about this like your household income. You have no money in your savings account. There's the money that's coming in that me and my wife are bringing in. It's not near that much, by the way. But that's line 24. And if you look at, again, line 88, our expenses are a lot higher than our revenues. Now that philosophically is a real problem for me from a budgeting. You'd love to see your revenues and expenses be the same, but we rely on that carryover. So we're lucky we got money in our checking, and every year we have to hope our fees come in heavy, or we're kind of in a problem. And so that the carryover's been good, but you can see in a year we didn't have a lot of building permits. There's a chance we'd have to come ask for more funds at some point. And so right now we're kind of an upside down budget when you kind of look at it generally with more expenses and revenues. But that it is what it is. We're heavy on the staff side. We don't do a lot of things. But luckily we start conservative with the fees, and we've been growing like crazy in this community. So the fees have been coming in big. But we got to start small. So I'm not worried about that at this point, because I think, again, this last quarter, I bet our fees come in good. Last month, we actually had $33,000 in 1 month, and we budget those around 8. So it's going to work out, and historically it has. But big picture, in a perfect world, I'd love for those expenses to be less, and I'd love for that revenue to be higher, but it's just a function of those two formulas. So that's our budget request. We are not asking for any more money. It's a preliminary budget. We typically wait until we hear what the government's going to do, and then in May or June we'll do a final budget, tweak some things, and then we'll start our fiscal year just like we did the prior years, probably with a little more money in the carryover. We are talking about possibly some changes, and I won't get into much of that detail, Judge, unless it's appropriate time.
We would just generally say that, thank you, Jordan. We can just generally say that the mayors and myself and Steve have worked on a concept to bring GIS back under the county. And in the preliminary budget, that wasn't presented to the planning commission, so we're going
Right.
to work through that. But
Yeah.
share whatever
Yeah.
you want. But it's still somewhat conceptual.
It is.
But it will likely come before the court.
So it's an interesting concept. So I did meet with the mayor and the judge early on before the planning commission committee, and met with them. And one of the ideas, just thinking out loud, it just hit me one day. We got a great GIS department, and we rely on it. We're fortunate. The other 2 counties I worked in, and one was big. I did not have GIS like this at the planning commission, but somebody did in the county, and we contracted with them. So we were a contractual person for GIS. We paid our way as long as several other agencies. In fact, in the first county, it was city side, and everyone paid their portion, whether it be $20,000 or $50,000. We all paid in at different levels. In the county I came from, we contracted for GIS services, just like accounting or legal services. So when I got here, we have GIS, which is great, but we got a ton of projects, ton of users, and we've been tracking who's using GIS. City, county, PVA, Parks and Rec uses it sometimes, and
Water
Midway,
districts.
and we do projects for all kinds of folks, and we're just starting to allocate where's the time go. And the planning commission is one of the bigger users, obviously. But what we thought about was one day I was looking at Kenneth's board of all his projects. You ever been in his office and seen it? There's a ton of stuff we're trying to get done, which is good. And I kind of feel like we're chasing our tails sometimes, and I would like to see the GIS department grow, and I'd like to see us fund it maybe a little different. I've been used to different kind of partnerships, and right now the way the partnerships work, it's pretty much 911 gives us $25,000, planning commission. It's city, county, and planning commission. The other places I've been, there's more partners involved, and it's easier to pay its way. It's easier to grow the department. And some of these other folks we're doing services for, in my opinion, probably should pay a little bit, or maybe we could cost share a different way. But my problem is I don't think the planning commission is the right conduit to do that. I think that's the city or the county. That's why the other places I've been, it's been the city or the county, because it's more likely the city or county could put these partnerships together. We get $25,000 from 911 for GIS, and that's been the same amount for a long time. And then our GIS department's about $148,000. I think there should be a partnership formula of some kind. I don't know what that is. I'd like for the county to sort of assist with that. I think that what I'd like is for the county to take over the GIS department, and then the planning commission be a contract on that, be of whatever amount, 25, 30, 50,000, whatever we have to pay, that's fine. But then the other folks we build some partnerships. And the goal is to grow the department, get these projects done. We got a ton of stuff on there, but we're going to still be one of the biggest users, in my opinion. And what I found out, the GIS department started at the county side, and it rolled to the planning commission. And that's what kind of puts our budget a little out of balance. And if we can kind of work through that, it would make our budget a little flatter. It'd be more consistent, and again, guarantee we wouldn't have to ask for more funds. But we would need to roll the money we're getting from 911 contractually to the county. Some of these contracts would have to roll to the county, but then we would become a contract user of the GIS system of whatever amount. And if we have to start in at third, that is what it is. It's kind of how we do it now, technically. You guys
Yeah.
give us the money, we turn around and pay it, and we pay a third. So that's kind of the concept we're working on to maybe go in effect in July. But we built this preliminary budget as it is today, and let the county think about that. And if it's doable, then we can tweak our budget before June, and you guys can build in what you need to. But we've talked with the mayors, both mayors and the judge, and we kind of think this is a good way to grow the department, give the department what it needs from structure. And, you know, this is an expensive department to run. These licenses aren't cheap, these contracts, these aerials that we do, and we all do participate on that. But it's just hard for me to grow the department or manage it as a contract agency as opposed to one of the parent governments. That's the idea. And Judge, you elaborate on that anyway.
No, I think you've, we've really talked about, I think, the progress of that conversation and discussion to this point. When it gets to line items and all that sort of stuff, you'll see it. But Steve, I had a couple other questions.
Yes, sir.
I think it'd be really important to know for the fiscal court to hear some of the conversation that's going on. I know you did a lot of this in the comprehensive plan meetings, but just how many building permits there are out there that are eligible
Yeah,
to
that's
be
a good
acted
question.
upon, which will affect your fees, but it
Yep.
will also affect growth.
Yep. So it's interesting. Yeah. So we keep I should have brought it, and I apologize. The mayor just asked me for some most recent information related to what we call our residential assessment. It's mostly for sales, and it kind of shows how many lots have been approved, how many lots are platted, how many lots have been built on, and how many lots are left. And we used to just do that for the named subdivisions, but we pulled in every vacant lot in the city. So we know generally, for example, there's about 159 lots that are left to be built on in Versailles that are platted. But there's another about 2,400 lots that could come online that aren't platted, that already are approved through the plat. For example, the one on Falling Springs that we just did, the Springs of Versailles, could be 237 homes. We got a piece of property on McCracken that could be 166 homes. We got the Legends with another 100 lots. We got Payne's Crossing that ultimately could be 600 homes. So all those are approved but not platted. So the mayor asked me to do an update of that, so I have that document. I'll be glad to email it to you. But right now, yeah, I know what we have happening, and when you break it down to the actual permits we're averaging about 70 a year of just single-family homes just in the city of Versailles. About 60 to 70 if you look over the last few years. I think we're already at 16 this year, and that's calendar year stuff. So we're already issued 16 permits for single-family homes in Versailles. But last year I think we did 66. The year prior we did 74. I think we did 72 the year prior to that. So we're averaging about that 70 number of homes. We're doing several in the county too, but most of them are in Versailles here. And they're, as you guys can imagine, as you drive by the Legends and Ball Homes has started a 200 lot development. It's approved, it's platted for 54, and they've already pulled 16 permits on that. If you've gone out there, the homes are already under construction. I believe some are for sale. About 6 or a dozen are already for sale. At the end of Granger, backs up to the Parkway. If you go back there off Huntertown and zigzag back off Granger, they've bought 200 of the lots of the Payne's Crossing development, and 54 are platted. 16 homes are under construction right now. And they're all around, I think I got on realtor.com, 360, 380 to 420 range, 420,000 range. And then they're permitted to do some duplexes back there too along the Parkway. I think it's approved for 26 duplexes. So Payne's Crossing was done several years before I got here. I don't know much about it, but that's under construction. McCracken Pike, that zone change I believe happened back 2000, 2001. I think it was pretty controversial when it was done. It's out there at the end of Elm Street on the left. That's approved for 166 homes, and that is actively being redesigned by a West Coast developer right now to do single-family homes out there. So that's happening. Falling Springs, I think they're getting ready to bring their first phase, and the Legends is getting ready to bring in their next phase. I think they're about done with phase 4 and then phase 5. They've been bringing them in at 20 to 30 lots at a time. So to the judge's point, that's the big driver of our fees, but it's hard to predict how many building permits you're going to do in a year. And they're based on square footage. They're 20 cents a square foot when you do a single family build. So we don't know what that is till they bring in their floor plan and say it's a 3,000 square foot house or 5,000 or whatever. But that drives our budget, and that's been a big driver. Funny enough, the commercial permits and industrial, we get these big hits here and there, but they're not near as many permits as we're doing. Single family is obviously our biggest driver of those fees. The plats, interesting enough, are Happen County side. This $12,000 we're projecting in the plats, these are all these minor plats, those in families, the things we talked about. We're getting a lot of subdivision. We got 12 items on our next planning commission agenda. 5 of them are plats. And they're just these nickel and dime cutting off lots out in the county stuff. So those come in at smaller chunks of money, but that's a big fee driver. That's why going to that percentage construction-based fee will be big, because we have all these subdivisions coming in. You know, if they put in $5 million of infrastructure, we get 1%. That's $5,000 on one plan review, and that'll be the big driver of our fees going forward, and take the pressure off all the small stuff, honestly. So,
Can you talk about, as much as you know about it, the city of Versailles' impact fee, what they charge for
I
people?
do not, Judge. That's a great question. I do know they have an impact fee for water and sewer. I don't know it was one, then they added the other. I don't know how those work or what those rates are. They're independent of us. I don't know if they're imposed when a property is platted or if when they're approved. You know, I'm assuming it's probably when it's platted and the lots are created. Like for using the McCracken, at this point it's approved for 166, but when the plat comes in, maybe it's 126. So I don't know when they impose those impact fees for water and sewer at that point in time, nor do I know what those amounts are in that realm. But I do know they have that, they do those for water and sewer for lots that are coming online that can be built on in the city's utility boundary.
And I touch upon that because, you know, our issues with the South Woodford Water District are well known. I think we're in a stable situation, but I think that the more development you have in the South, the more stress and strain you're going to put on that system that is under maintenance and in repair. There is some discussion about the fire hydrants that's coming through.
So that's happening. So we've had a lot of discussion about fire hydrants. South Woodford participated in that. Your volunteer fire chief participated in that. North Woodford, other utility providers. We did not have a fire hydrant spacing or fire hydrant placement requirement in our current regs. And in an update of the subdivision regulations that are going to go into effect May the 1st, there's now for the first time going to be a fire hydrant requirement. So when people come in and plat property, if they're not within 2,000 feet of a hydrant, they're going to be required to either put a hydrant in, or if it's just basically not feasible, there's a waiver built into it, but the waiver comes by way of the fire department and the utility department. It's not going to be us doing the waiver. But for, you know, if it's just, hey, we're 3,000 feet away, or maybe we're 1,500 foot away, but the water line's not conducive to a hydrant, there's a waiver built in. But the goal is all these properties keep getting divided. We need to be putting fire hydrants in. That request came by way of the fire department. 1,000-foot spacing would really help them with their ISO rating procedure, but the planning commission wasn't willing to take that big bite initially, and we had some pushback about the fire hydrant ordinance in general in the subregs. So we started with a 2,000-foot spacing requirement as a baby step to get this into the regs, and that is in the subregs. So that went through just the planning commission, didn't have to come through you all, but that goes in effect May the 1st. So when someone brings a plat in, we'll now ask the developer, hey, where's the nearest hydrant? And if it's further than 2,000 feet, to get their plat approved, they're going to have to commit to putting in a hydrant on their own dime or get the waiver, one or the other.
I appreciate that update. I think what I asked the question about permits because I think it's always surprising for people to hear how many permits could be pulled at any point in time, and pretty large growth and development could begin at any point in time. And I anticipate that when interest rates drop, that will happen. I also, you know, every residential subdivision and home that's built impacts, if not put strain on additional infrastructure. Everybody needs sewer, everybody needs water, everybody needs electric, and you know, there's a big discussion about housing, affordable housing, growth and development, but the reality is that the existing residents of Woodford County will be the ones helping to pay the bill for most of that development, especially if it's in the county, because we have no impact fee.
Yeah.
Because we have put $300,000 in South Woodford Water out of our general fund. So there's some major considerations, and there's some potential major changes to the county should these developments come to fruition.
Judge, I add to that list just not water, sewer, electric. It's roads, it's police, fire, schools.
Schools and
It's all those things. It's animal control. I mean, everything you do in the county right now, you got more to do when you add more people.
That's right.
And as I showed during the comp plan meetings, we're drifting off the budget a tad bit, but you know, the growth trends here, we showed over the last census, and I've showed you guys that, Versailles grew at over a 20% clip, which put it in top 5 in the Bluegrass region and top 15 in the entire state. So they grew at just over 20% population growth, which is big. I mean, that's 2% a year, and we're staying on that same pace. And it multiplies because we've already grown a little more, and then you do another 10 years at 2%. So yeah, there's a lot of projects. I would have never guessed that when I started here. I didn't think that. But when you look at how many lots we've got developed, how many lots are coming online, how many permits we're doing, I don't see that slowing down. And the interest rates haven't been low, and we're still building a lot of houses, and expensive houses.
Yeah.
So maybe they're not financing them, I guess, or something. But yeah, it's interesting what we're seeing in the single family. That is dominating all the growth that we're seeing.
And I would point out that with all of this development, the fees and all those sort of things, we're still not covering planning and zoning's budget with that. You're still needing city and county revenue.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, someday, Judge, it'd be great if we were. It's not likely. A lot of planning commissions, if they thought they could just live off their fees, they'd have to make them probably so high it would hurt the small users, people building decks and pools. It's always got to be a mix of our fees and city and county appropriations to get this done. But as I mentioned, a lot of planning commissions this size don't have engineering, don't have GIS, so we're fortunate. So we're a little bigger budget than I'll just tell you my prior budget was only $225,000, and I was a staff of 2, and we're a little bigger county. Of course, I didn't make as much as I make here either. So. So yeah, we got some different things here, and we operate differently, and we're growing at a different pace than those places too. It's amazing when you actually look at the numbers, how fast we're growing, just from the residential side.
Yeah. I really appreciate it, Steve. I open up the floor for any questions to Director Hunter. Squire Carl, you turn on your mic. Sorry.
Excellent on this, and
Thank you.
you've broken it down, and I love this because the sheriff's office operates on fees, and it's always been categorized like that, and it's so easy to read it and realize what your fees, what they mean to you in a budget. And you took some pretty big hits on lawyers and the health insurance, so.
Well, let me explain one other thing that I didn't mention. So in this new concept, if we go this forward with the GIS moving county side, what we want to do is project our fees where they're at. And we want to create a line item that would be city-county reimbursement, similar to what the clerk does, or I think the PVA's done recently with the excess fees. What we want to do is keep this budget tight, and if we have a boom fee year, we want to roll those fees back to the city. So we want to keep asking for 140, and if we have a good fee year, we want to have a 10% operating reserve. Anything over that, we want to roll back to the city and the county at the third quarter of every year. So if the fees are booming and we have a good year, and we've already created a line item like that in this other kind of draft budget, it'll say city county reimbursement. It'll actually be a bottom reserve account, and we'll just put all the extra money there, and at the end of the third quarter, for having a good year, we'll just roll that back to you guys in the same 4/9, 1/9 percentage that we do now. That would be part of the concept, as well as be a contract agency to pay our way on GIS.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Squire Varner, you ready?
Yes. Steve, how often do you review your permit fees, and when was the last time they were?
They were just revised here recently. They went in effect in January. So I think they did them prior to that in 2020. Then they changed building permit fees in 2022 before I got here. But we kind of did an overhaul. They really didn't change much. Most of the fees stayed the same. Building permit fees stayed the same. We didn't change those. The construction review fees went up. We lowered some of the things like fences and above ground pools. Some of the small things that we were charging, for example, $150. We made everything like $50 or $30. So those small permit fees, what we call zoning permit fees, we lowered some of those. We made the zone changes. We tiered those instead of making them a one fee approach to scale them with the size of the project. We had some fees where you paid twice, like on a plat, you paid for the preliminary plat, then you paid again for the final plat. We just made that one fee, one process. Everything stayed about the same. We didn't really raise anything except the construction review fees. We made sure to keep the building permit fees exactly the same because that's the one that drives our budget the most. Again, I think the goal we have here is not to raise them up at some point where someone comes in to build a garage or a house is like, wow, why am I paying $300 to put an above ground pool in or put, right now, for example, swimming pool permit's $100. And we did look at all the counties around us on some of those nickel and dime fees, try to keep them in line. But there's a whole bunch that goes into those building permit fees. Actually, if you look at those, break down building permits, there's about 40 kind of building permit fees that, whether it's solar panels or a cell tower or commercial range hood, or we have a fee for a sprinkler system, alarm system. They're all a different kind of fee. But in general, residential permits are 20 cents a square foot. Multifamily and commercial are 25 cents a square foot. That's how we bill them on the square foot.
If you raise the square foot fees, do you think that would affect building in this county?
No, I don't think it'd slow it down at all. It'd just be higher. I just happened to look at Scott counties the other day. Their residential's 10 cents a square foot and ours is 20. And in some I've seen they're as high as 30 and I've seen others as high as 40. So again, if you build a 3,000 square foot house and it's 20 cents a square foot, that's $600. That's not a whole lot. If you build a 3,000 square foot house and it's a $300,000 house, but you could build a 3,000 square and it's the $800,000 house, you can see where some counties go to value-based permit instead of square footage, and that would actually make sense because we go square foot. So again, it's the same amount whether I build an $800,000 house or a $300,000 house. It's based on the footprint. Some go value, and I could see that being fair, honestly. But we did not change any of those permit fees on those.
Thank you, Steve.
If there's any suggestions, we'd be open to it, though. We just being conservative with that.
Sure. Sure, Squire. You got to turn on your mic, please.
Thank you. Is that 1% public infrastructure fee pretty standard for the people that have it?
Most of the bigger planning commissions, it ranged between 1% and 5%.
Okay.
Scott County's a 0.5%. We went to 1. I was 1 in Bull. I was 2.5 in Warren County. We did 2.5%.
And when you were talking about things that plats that are been approved, what about apartments?
We have several. For example, we have an approved plan for 96 apartments next to Daisy Hill. Don't know why they haven't pulled a permit. They keep telling me they're ready to go. Other than that, I don't think we have any apartment projects coming online. Maybe some small stuff, but with the Edgewood rezoning, all that residential went off. And I believe Mr. Schott has a zone change east of Payne's Crossing that had multifamily in it, but I believe it's still in court. I think it would be somewhere in the 500, 600 apartment range.
So that's in addition to the numbers you quoted earlier?
Yeah, the numbers I told you were just all single
family.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
But right now, the only one I know coming online is the 96 apartments next to Daisy Hill. And those would be 24 plexes, I
Do you
believe.
have a one-pager maybe you could shoot the court on?
Absolutely. I got it for both multifamily and single family.
Yes, if that.
I can send it to all you guys, yeah. Shows all those numbers.
And let me say, Steve did a tremendous job in the comprehensive plan introductory educational meetings and explaining this stuff in detail. And those are streamed. You can watch those. But we appreciate you deliver them here in court. And you mentioned you got some big ticket items at the next P&Z meeting?
Just mention real quick, we got 12 items, 5 plats, 3 development plans, 2 zone changes, and the text amendment that's still tabled. And we are going to review the Versailles traffic study that they did. The zone changes are fairly easy. One's for the Woodford Inn back here. Their property is actually split zoned, commercial and a little bit of conservation. They want to make it one zone to give them the ability to put a few cabins, I guess, back there or along the side. The zone changes for Rail Explorers, where Bluegrass Rail Museum is. That is actually zoned agriculture. It's only an 8-acre tract. It's not government owned. It's a nonprofit, as you know. And then they lease to Rail Explorers, as you guys know, the pedal bikes that are out there. We gave them a temporary use permit for last year to operate, but now this year they're going to make it their permanent home. They want to build some buildings, build some parking lots, and they need to zone commercial because they're actually not farming, they're not ag, and the setbacks don't work for the building, so they're going to zone neighborhood business or propose that so they can build a couple buildings and build some parking lots out there. So that's one of the zone changes, is to bring that property into compliance from the zoning side. It's not owned by the county, that's owned by Bluegrass Rail Museum, owns their property themselves. And they lease the Rail Explorers, so they need to zone commercial so they can build their stuff for this year. So they're not that complicated, but it's a whole lot of agenda items. And we're actually going to start the April 11th meeting early as a special called meeting at 5:30 to try to get a head start on some of that stuff. But no, there's a text amendment. There's a Versailles only text amendment that's been tabled that changes their short-term rental stuff slightly, and a few other things that they want to have put in their ordinance. So yeah, we're going to have a big agenda on April 11th.
Other questions for Director Hunter regarding planning and zoning's budget? Any other items we've touched on? As always, Steve is a wealth of knowledge. He's an expert in the field. If you need anything, if you have any questions about this budget, he's right here on the second floor if you need him. And that goes for everybody who submits their budgets. But I appreciate it, Steve.
Yeah. I also
got
wanna,
into depth that I didn't think we'd get into, but I welcome it.
I also want to recognize I have a 5-member budget committee. Planning Commission does budget personnel, and they do most of the heavy lifting. It's not just me. So they did all this.
Thank you to them.
And this is approved. We approved it at our last meeting, this preliminary budget. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Now we have Chief Mike Murray of the Versailles Police Department to come and talk about our police budget. Thanks, Chief. Thanks for your patience with us.
Oh, no. It's always, I learn something every time I listen to Steve.
Same.
Has everybody been provided a copy of the first draft?
Yes, sir.
We're going to start on the salary line. What that salary line includes is a 3.5% increase, cost of living adjustment for all full-time employees. We have 36 current full-time officers. Actually, we got 4 part-time officers. We have 2 vacant full-time officer positions. We have 2 full-time civilian employees, and also 2 employees shared with other departments, like Brian Hawker, our IT person, and then Glenn Crawford, our custodian. Previously, we had talked about effective April 1, all sworn officers will be getting a $10,000 across-the-board bump. That excludes myself and my assistant chief and our 4 part-timers. Also, that salary line includes a $1 per shift for shift premium for our night shifters. That'll be effective July 1. There's been a reduction in retirement contribution rates, and which has made a big impact. The non-hazardous has gone down 3.63%. Our hazardous has gone down 5.08%. All of our insurance numbers are just an estimate based on current employees and what their current insurance plans are. Actual quotes have not been yet received, but the budget will be updated when that happens. Myself and Tracy Combs worked very hard keeping all of our operational expenditures static. If you look at the total there at the bottom, what the budget would be at $6,382,758. And then what the county's portion would be, subtracted from that number, is the incentive pay. The schools, what they pay us to provide 2 school resource officers, one at the high school, one at the middle school. What Midway's portion is going to be this year, because Their percentage went from 4.25 to 5.5%. And then you get the balance there at $5,790,164. And then what the county's 38% is of the operating budget, which would be a total of $2,200,262. And then we've got the quarterly payments broken down, which would be $550,065.61. Any questions before we go to capital?
I'd open the floor for any questions for the chief regarding, and we can come back to questions you have if you want to go ahead and do that.
Okay. On the capital, for cruisers and equipment, it would be for 5 Chevy Tahoes. Of those 5, 3 are going to be for the patrol officers. The other 2 are going to be for detectives. So the cost to equip them is much cheaper because they don't have any stripes or any markings on them. The flock license plate readers, that annual fee is $50,000. And just to kind of give you an update on what they have done to assist law enforcement in our community, I think we've recovered probably 15 to 20 stolen vehicles, which the majority of them resulted in an arrest. We've gotten people that had been entered into the system for being wanted, missing persons, anybody that's entered for Amber Alert, golden alerts, or green alerts for veterans. It'll certainly alert us. Anybody that's a focus or a suspect in an investigation where we can enter them into our hot list to let us know that they've entered our jurisdiction, it'll tell us that as well. They've been a game changer. They've also assisted us in a number of other investigations that we've had because, you know, through the year we work a lot of vehicle accidents where people leave the scene. So they've been a big help in that area as well. Our ballistic vest, as previously discussed on other budgets, our ballistic vests have a 5-year shelf life, and they all come with an expiration date. Some officers, you know, most officers have different expiration dates depending on when they were hired. So that's what that $16,000 amount is for. 10 ballistic vests, and then also the outer carriers that the panels have to go into. We kept the net gain retainer the same at $5,000. On the firearms upgrade on our current budget, if you recall, our special response team, to test these red dot sights out, we tested them with our special response team members. And they have performed very well. They will increase officer proficiency. Course 2, that red dot comes with a different holster, which the holsters have to be replaced as well. So that's what that $50,000 amount is for, is to upgrade the normal patrol officers now, transition them. Our axe and body cameras, for a long time, well, since 2015 up until just the last 6 months ago, we had used VView body cameras. All that video storage was done in-house. We would upload it to a server at the police department. Well, VView became obsolete, and they're no longer available, so we had to think of another body cam to replace those with, and we went with Axon's Body 4 body camera that has cloud-based storage. We did a 5-year contract with them to minimize the cost. In July, we will have a $7,358 payment due to them, and then in October, a $33,109 payment. The next item down, everybody remembers the blue hybrid uniform that we'd wear that had the actual metal badges, gold, and the silver buttons. Well, we're going to transition now because what we're wearing now is all black. And so that line item number for the $20,250 is to provide one Class A uniform in black to all the officers. What's included is one long sleeve shirt, one short sleeve shirt, one pair of pants, shoes, and a hat. If you go down to the computer workstations and Office 2024, what that $78,000 is for is we have 50 Microsoft Office computers. That's for the licensing for all of them. There's 50. The workstation and laptops, there's 36 of them. They're due to be replaced because they're 5 years old, so all the warranty is off of them. And when we select these computers, Brian Hawker is very picky on what he picks. These are just mid-level computers. A lot of them are refurbished as well. Also, the Windows 11 Pro upgrade for the MDTs, there's 50, and that's the operating system for all of our MDTs. The next thing down is the drug terminator portable incinerator. In our property and evidence room, our property and evidence custodians are constantly purging and destroying evidence from court orders or things that have no more value to them, whether evidentiary or if it's somebody's personal property that's been turned in and hadn't been claimed. But that $7,000 cost is for an incinerator because for years we have never had any way to what I consider, and I used to be a property and evidence custodian for many years, but to properly dispose of it and keep the air clean. We'd use a 50-gallon drum, put it in there, put some diesel fuel on it, and we'd light it. Recycling's been very generous to us. They'll find a location for us out there on their property and they'll dig a pit for us. We do that as well. So Nathan Craig, who found this incinerator, other agencies are using them. Jeffersontown uses them. They've been very happy with it. The last thing on capital is the VMware subscription. That software is the underlying physical server that allows us to run multiple virtual windows and other servers on a single piece of physical hardware. The company has eliminated the lower cost support options, therefore the subscription has increased substantially, and this is for a 3-year renewal. Questions, Judge?
Thank you, Chief. Let me swear, Carl, you might be a question.
Yeah, just curious, Mike, on the flock readers, is that fee based on how many officers are using them, or what's it based on?
It is not. Well, each camera is about $3,000. That comes with a pole too. There's some locations where we have them where we have an existing pole. There's a lot that goes into it because we had to get approval from the state.
Put them up.
And Flock, they've been very good. You know, they take care of all the maintenance because it's their property. If something gets damaged, they replace it. So it's really a good deal. And to have 19 of them strategically placed throughout the whole county. You know, we have other agencies that are in central Kentucky that don't have any in their community, and they reach out to us, you know, to see, you know, because now that they're working on their budgets, I think some of these other agents that had not had them are trying to get them now.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah, I was just curious. I mean, I saw the fee and I knew there was a fee attached to it, but I didn't know what they based it on. So
Right.
maybe it's based per camera.
Now, we used to have one, we actually had 20, but that 20th one was different. It was mobile. And we didn't use it much, so we returned it back to them to get credit,
Okay.
you know. But anytime we've had an issue with them, they've always been very responsive
Yeah.
to whatever our request is.
Well, I know they're good. They
They're
definitely do
very
the work.
good.
And to reiterate, Chief, so that 50,000 is for the subscriptions to the current flock cameras we
It
have?
is.
No new ones?
No, 19 has served us well, because originally when we budgeted for it, it was 65,000. Now what we did, because now we're under a 5-year contract, they gave us the rate at 2,500 per camera. So we jumped on that instead of being, instead of paying 3,000
Yeah.
per camera.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Excellent.
you're welcome.
Other questions for the Chief? Squire Verna, you're recognized.
Chief, on the flock plate readers, how is that data stored and how long is that stored?
I'd have to get my information on how long it's stored. I believe it's 30 days. We have a current policy on it, and it's very strict too, because we've only got, I think we've got 2 or 3 administrators of the system, so it cannot be improperly used, but again, Rob Young, my assistant chief, he's one of the administrators. He's the one that actually was able to get us that locked in $2,500 amount rate when we were negotiating, because at the very beginning I wasn't really too happy about getting locked in for 5 years, but I don't see us getting rid of them down the road. It's like having another set of eyes out there, Again, too, it only focuses on the back end of that vehicle. It doesn't, you can't see any persons in that when we look at the image. Now, what it will do, too, it takes a good picture and it sends all the officers on their email and also their phones that alert. It also alerts our dispatchers, too, because within the last 10 days, we got an alert on 60 coming inbound, and it hit on the camera right there by the castle. One of our officers located the vehicle because it turned into Kroger. And again, made an arrest, recovered the vehicle, returned it back to its original owner out of Anderson County. I mean, it's a game changer,
Thanks, Chief.
Mr. County Attorney?
Chief, I've had, let me just say, fully supportive of what you're doing. I did want to comment to the court, the retention bump I think is critical. I know we've lost officers to UKPD, multiple, and to other agencies, and this department is different. We don't have, these are primarily young officers who are seeking a retirement, aren't working in another department or agency where they already have a retirement and are drawing 2 salaries in effect. This is to make sure that you can keep a core group. I want to make sure the court understands that. Also make sure the court understands the importance of that body cam and how that eliminates a lot of issues that we typically deal with. I deal on a regular basis in court with the elimination of paraphernalia and drugs and so forth that incinerator serves. The one question I do have, and that was raised to me, the county balance share is 38%. Midway's has gone up 1.75 or 1.25%, it looks like. When that happens, so for example, prior to this budget, it looks like the city share would have been 67.75%, Midway 4.25%, and the county 38%. With Midway going up 1.25%, does that, I guess, come off what the city percent is? Because I don't see it coming off the 38% for the county. How is that made up?
No, it's just basically, you got the total budget number, you know, the
But
police.
let me make sure, make it
Make
clear.
sure I understand what you're asking.
The three components would be county or city contribution, which is the primary, county, which is second, and then Midway, which is third in terms of the significance toward the 100%.
Right.
So, for 100% of a budget, if the county share was 38% and the Midway share had been 4.25, then that would tell me that the city component had been 67.75, okay?
Okay.
To equal 100. Now that Midway is going up 1.25, if the county's is remaining 38%, I assume then the city
Cities
share
is-
drops by the 1.25
That's-
to 56
That-
or 60. How does that work?
Well, that's how I would see it, Alan. And of course, to give you a correct answer, I'd have to ask the mayor.
Yeah.
You know,
So-
but since theirs went up, I would see the city's portion just going down gradually.
So there was not consideration to the county getting a portion of that or all of that to come off the 38%? That just came off the Midway, the Versailles contribution?
Right.
Okay,
I wasn't part of that meeting.
okay,
That would have been the mayor and Midway's mayor.
okay. But I don't think the county was either, to whether or not that might come off the 38% or a portion of that off the 30%.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
And Chief, do you all provide your individual salary breakdown for each officer to the city councils?
Yeah, I think Elizabeth Reynolds, I believe does.
That
I would
information?
have to ask her to verify that.
Sure, if you want to.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Squire Taylor, you're recognized.
Just so I understood, the network workstations compared, is that, you also mentioned MDTs. Are those one and the same, or would those be computers at the department, you know, in indoors, or are they the MDTs terminals themselves?
Some are indoor,
Okay.
and a lot of them are the MDTs that are actually in the officer's car.
Okay. I wanted to make sure I was following the potential interchangeable use of the words. That's what I thought you were saying, but I
Gotcha.
got thrown off a little bit on that.
Right.
Other questions for the chief? Questions or comments? Chief, do you have any estimation if there will be any funds returned to the county in this fiscal year, or do you know?
I'm hoping so, Mayor.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I feel like there will be. You know, of course, too, you know, we're a little short right now with staffing, so, you know, we got that extra money a little bit. But right now, we're paying a lot of overtime, too, to keep our shift minimums. Yeah, just one thing I'll just let the court know. We've got 2 recruits that'll be graduating Basic Academy on April 18th. Melody's son, Zach, graduated back in February, and he's doing a great job. He's in his field training right now. Of course, too, looking right now, we're doing the background on Alan Lay. He's returning. So I think his start date is April the 17th. One good thing about bringing Alan back is, for one, he's very familiar with our policies and procedures. He's a local. He's very familiar, so it'll be very little amount of time that he'll be going through refreshing. So we're still looking to bring on 2 more laterals, but again, we're very particular who we hire. It's got to be the right fit for the community.
Absolutely. And Chief, I know I mentioned this last time, and it's not a it's not a criticism. It's not even a complaint. It's just something that when the $10,000 per officer was brought up, there was some confusion in the community, and I think even among our officers that that it was the city that did that. And while the city made that decision, you know, it's important for folks to know the level of commitment we have to our officers and the police department. And I fully anticipate submitting this budget request for the full amount in my budget to the court. And I just hope we can continue to make sure that folks know that it's a true partnership, that and Midway is involved as well, and that increased amount that they're paying is reflective of their support of VPD as well.
I can assure you, Judge, that all the officers at the police department knows where we get our funding. Because one thing that, you know, because we get part of our funding from the fiscal court, some from Midway, and then for sales, we're able to get more things.
Yes.
You know, I mean.
And we're able to support the officers like that.
Oh, you do. And, you know, I've said this many times, when it comes to public safety, I don't think you, the mayor, or Mayor Thurman, or Vandegrift, when he was in, has ever said no, you know. But I have to explain it, you know.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. That's the budget process. And, you know, it's the fiscal court is the unanimous voter on all those budgets, but I appreciate it. We appreciate VPD.
I'll just say I appreciate everything that all the court members do in supporting the police department and all of our personnel. And you too, Judge. And
Thank you.
of course, Alan.
Always love
I don't think there's anybody else in the state that's got a prosecutor like Alan, so.
I'll pay you outside.
Oh, thank you, Chief. Anything else for the Chief before we go?
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you all.
Thank you. I think we do have the Conservation District here. We're running about 9 minutes till fiscal court. Thank you. So let me just bring up a few things. You all have received several budgets, and you're going to continue to receive these line items. And again, the process is different than it has been in the past. And what I mean by that is you're getting draft budgets in real time. When they're coming to me after my meetings with department heads and the treasurer and different agencies, you're getting either the draft or the preliminary of that budget. So you've received ambulance. Direct your comments to Director Bailey. I will say that the police department is experiencing something that's not uncommon among first responders, and that is retention, our ability to retain first responders. And I am currently working with Director Bailey and Teresa Tipton on retention efforts in the personnel line items for EMS. Those are not ready for review, but I want you all to know about those. Those will be coming. If you have questions about that, direct those to Director Bailey. I've mentioned that our health insurance is projected to increase this year, and it does look like it'll be a substantial increase over years past. And that is a big impact on the budget and something that we're going to have to look at other line items when it relates to personnel. So I really encourage you all to be patient, because we don't get that information from our insurance companies until late April. So I am in a crunch to present my budget with the most accurate number. And this is the first year that I'm aware of, and it's definitely my first year as judge, where we're going to be faced with a large increase in health insurance premiums. And I only have a little bit of time to incorporate that into the budget and then get that to you. So I'd encourage you to have patience with the final personnel figures. I know that we've had individuals that wanted to look at each individual health insurance line item for our employees. If you look at the All Lines Fund, that is projected to go up nearly $90,000. The KCO All Lines Fund this year, that's another large increase in the budget. And workers' comp is estimated. You got that email in your inbox. It's estimated to increase $165,000 in this budget. We had some workers' comp situations in the past that we are now reflecting in our premiums, and that's another large increase in personnel line items going forward. I think we will take up the Conservation District's draft preliminary budget in the committee reports. And we will, if there's nothing else to come before the Budget and Finance Committee, we will, no, we're not ready for that. But thank you, Jordan. Squire Varney, you had something additional?
Just offering and asking for a suggestion, or offering a suggestion that maybe we look at having maybe 1 or 2 work sessions.
Already scheduled, already ahead of you on that.
Thank you very
So we'll
much.
have those once my budget is released. You all get my budget before May 1st, and then we'll have at least 2 opportunities to go over the presented budget for the court.
Did you say you had those scheduled?
Well, no, so we don't know the date yet. We have to work with DLG to make sure when they're going to be able to approve our budget for second reading. My budget will come to you before May 1st. That was set out in our very, very first budget meeting. All of our preliminary meetings will include all of the line items, and then we'll have at least 2 meetings before we have our first reading. Meetings, workshops, budget meetings, whatever you want to call them. Other questions or comments? I mean, so I've had conversations with judges, treasurers, other fiscal courts. This is the most real-time inclusive budget process that anybody has done. I mentioned to you all that some judges float their budget out and say, here it is. If you have any questions, ask somebody else. I've kept you all in the loop, provided you with the most real-time line item information, and my hope is that you will do your homework and ask questions on those line items prior to a work session so that we can streamline that and move forward. The other thing is, it's a lot easier for somebody to work on their budget when you ask them a question and get back to you than to be at that podium and have to figure it out on the fly on a live stream. Although folks like Steve do a great job with that. So any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I will adjourn this session of the Budget and Finance Committee, and we will reconvene in full fiscal court momentarily. Thank you.